Hi, and welcome back to the second episode of Flashbacks. In today's episode, my guest and I will be talking about the book Night by Ellizer Wiesel. My guests today are Delilah and Katie. Say hi.
Hi.
Today we'll be talking about the book Night by Ellizer Wiesel. The book is set during the Holocaust, 1941 to 1945, and shows the accounts of teenager Ellizer Wiesel and his family navigating the struggles during that time. Night, narrated by Eli, chronicles his experiences as a Jew during the Holocaust. His family is deported from Hungary, brought to Auschwitz, and experiences starvation, abuse, and death. The Holocaust was the genocide of European Jews during World War II. Between 1941 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered some 6 million Jews across German-occupied Europe, around two-thirds of Europe's Jewish population. Now we'll be talking about our thoughts, opinions, and takeaways from the book. What were your favorite/least favorite parts of the book?
I think my favorite part was probably the beginning, because you get to see like what a normal and like happy and sustainable life they got to live and like what was taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
And my least favorite part was probably like the very last paragraph of the book, because it says that like he looks in the mirror and sees his face and like his gaunt body, and he wishes to never see that again, and like he truly sees himself in what it has put him through and how like unrecognizable he is. And I think that like really hits hard, because like they almost kind of shows that they like go into like they were like surfacing through it and like not really recognizing what was going on until they saw the effects that it was taking on their body, and that was really hard for me to read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I don't know if I have like a favorite part, because the whole book is very devastating and hard to read the whole time. But I do have to agree with Katie. Like the beginning is definitely like a better part of the book, because they are happy and you can see their lives before this tragedy happens. And then again, I agree with Katie about like the end of the book, when he does finally like he can look at himself and like see what he's actually gone through and like how like what toll it's taken on his body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not. It's like it's hard to have a favorite part of the book, because most of the book is like tragedy and just like really horrific things happening to Ellie and like all the other Jews. But like the last part of the book where they're all like in the train car, and it's like he talks about how there were like 100 people, but then they slowly had to like dump out the bodies, and how it got to the point where they were happy to like dump out the bodies because they had more space. Like just going through that and like having to like feel happy that like you have to like carry out a dead body, like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you find interesting about the book?
It's really, I mean, every book that you read that's a personal account of a story from any perspective, from like Schindler's List to the Anne Frank's diary, all of it, you always like unlock a part of it that, because everyone has their own personal experience with it, and with that brings so much more information about it that you don't know. And so obviously just like the little things in this book, the little like day-to-day details and everything that he personally went through, because everyone has so many different experiences with it, like all the survivors. So I think the little details was like really interesting to me.
Yeah. Not
interesting, like hard, but interesting, because you'll never know what it really was like, but you slowly start to like unlock more and more memories to kind of start piecing it together.
Yeah, also like since it's like a first-person narrative, it makes it seem more real almost, because it's not like a glorified story about like that someone's writing about it. It's actual, like they were actually in the Holocaust, it actually happened to them, and it makes it just seem more real, and you can realize like what they had to go through every day. And like Katie said, like the little details that they mentioned, like shoes being too big, or like shoes being covered in mud, everything like that makes it seem just more real, and like such a tragedy that it actually happened.
Yeah, I found it interesting how he conveyed like his emotions and feelings, because I feel like in most books like the characters will like say out loud what they're feeling, but he used figurative language like soup. Like he used the soup to describe his feelings. And I also liked how different it is from most other books about the Holocaust. Like you mentioned Anne Frank's diary, and that's like we didn't get to see like her accounts like in a concentration camp. Like, she was hiding, she was trying to survive annex. So I found that interesting. Okay, how would you imagine yourself as the main character?
I think that me and Eli would definitely be very similar with how we do it and just trying to coast through it and get through it. Because, I mean, from what we know now and what they knew during it is so vastly different that I think that me personally, I would deal with it just coasting through it and trying to get to the end, whatever the end for me would be. And yeah, I think that's how I would deal with it.
Yeah, I feel like I would be like angry, confused, sad, but I feel like I just wouldn't know what was going on. I would be confused why this is happening, and I feel like I would try to like search for answers, kind of like, oh, like what's going on in other places, like what does anyone know this is happening to us, like things like that. But other than that, I feel like I would be similar to Eli, just because like he does kind of just try to survive the whole time, and he knows what to do to survive.
When I look at books written by people, but like it shows them as a kid, I always like think about how strong they were. Like, I think Eli was really strong because he was like our age, and I don't know if I was him, like how I would react, sort of. Like, he had to endure it and he had to go through it, but he did it in a way where he really just like didn't try to give up. Even when his like father did or like others did, he really tried to survive and to live, and obviously he did, and he wrote this book. What stuck out most to you while reading the book?
I think personally, like, it was the little tragedies, and obviously the whole thing is a tragedy, but like just the little like deaths and like little details. I know I've said that before, but like the death of the 6-year-old because he was trying to survive and eat, and he was murdered for it. And like it said during that time that it took almost 3 hours for him to die because he was so light that when he was being hung, it like took him a while for it to cut off his breathing. And so just little things like that like, I don't know, it was just, that part was like,
It was hard,
Yeah. For me, what stuck out most was like actually how many deaths there were. Because like I obviously knew there was a lot in the Holocaust, but just like every like day-to-day life, there was like he counted like so many deaths just like being in the camps, not even like in the crematories, like just people dying because of starvation or exhaustion or anything like that. So I think that stuck out most for me.
Yeah, I didn't realize that in the concentration camps they were put to work. Like I thought it was like you either like get killed or you like slowly die. But I didn't realize they were put to work. So when I read that like so many people died because like of exhaustion, I just found it really interesting.
Yeah, I also think like how normalized death was to them. Like, he breezes past it like, oh, they're going to be sent to the crematories, and I think like he fully didn't, not realize, but he kind of like glazed over it, because obviously when you're living in a place where hundreds of thousands of people are being sent to their death every day, and you're digging graves for like these people, so it's like how normalized it was there.
In a couple of words, how would you describe the book?
Dark,
tragic, depressing.
Yeah, I would say like dark and depressing and tragic.
Yeah, I would describe it as like eye-opening, because I think there's a lot of people that are ignorant today about like the Holocaust and like other genocides or other historical events, and I think that this book shows a really different perspective from a lot of the other Holocaust books. I just think it's really eye-opening and really informational. So what did you learn from reading this book?
I learned a little more about how people were treated in the camps, because kind of like you said, like I wasn't sure how, like, to the extent of how much they were put to work.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the book they said they had to run just because, and they had to were forced in these like little spaces with 100 people, And just things like that I didn't know before kind of like gave me a new perspective on like how they were actually treated.
Yeah.
I think a couple things that I learned was how much the prisoners or the people in the camp had to like how much they moved them, because like he says that he starts off in Birkenau, then goes to Auschwitz, then he's moved at the end, and like they're just moved around so much because they had to cover their footsteps, and like with that, how little people knew about what was going on, because when Eli and his family was moved to concentration camps, it wasn't like the beginning of all of that. Like it had been happening for years, and they had no clue. They barely knew anything about the war itself, and so it goes to show like how that's how much they knew, and they were living so close. And thinking of people in like Russia, like Russian soldiers, and like people in the U.S. and like they had no clue what was going on because they were so good at like erasing their footsteps, and like no one knew until they were saved. So it was how good they kept it a secret is something that I learned.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because they really just kept it a secret. They moved from concentration camps so often, and I wonder if like the people in the camps like thought about the other countries and like thought if other people knew what was going on, like what would happen. But I also learned like how brutal that the officers were treating people there. Like when we read that they were using like children as targeting practice, like that's really hard to hear. And it's also like constant killing of people every day, whether it was like actual like officers killing people or like exhaustion or starvation. Like it was just really brutal, and I don't know how I would like react to like just like living there or seeing what happened.
And also like Eli talks about how much like blame he puts on himself, and I think something else that's really glazed over even today is how many like suicides there were. Because when you're put in this situation where everyone, and it's like they can see who is there and who's being killed. Like it's not German people, it's Jews and blacks and like gays and all of that people, so he can see like what's going on, and I think it like put a lot of blame on them, and like they thought that they did something wrong and they just didn't know it. So it's how many like suicides there were that no one talks about, and he says like so many people just gave up and like killed themselves, and I think that's really
kind of like his father at the end.
As the book unfolds, we see many representations of Eli's faith in his religion and God. Given his situation, he loses his faith very quickly. If you were in his shoes, would you lose faith in your religion?
I think I definitely would, because he's grown up believing that like this superior being would always protect him, and he was put on this earth by him, and it was like this big protector, and then this is happening. So I think I would definitely maybe not lose my faith, but get very, very angry and confused on why I wasn't being protected at like a time like that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I wouldn't lose my complete faith, because I feel like when you grow up believing something, it's kind of like wired into you almost. And I feel like everyone around Eli still believed. So I feel like it wasn't that he was losing faith or like anything like that. It was more, I would be like angry. He was angry at God, and just like confused at why it was happening to him.
I would be very confused, and I think I'd be very angry, but I would still cling on to something, I feel like, because again, like it's so deeply rooted in me. Like his father was a rabbi, and I just think that I wouldn't lose my faith, but I would question everything, like every day, like why am I seeing this, and why do I have to go through this?
And I feel like part of you, when you're in that situation, you have to cling on to something. You have to have something to believe in, or you're just gonna die just because you have no hope left in you.
Dehumanization is a recurring theme in the book. Alongside the Holocaust, many violent historical times in history require the use of dehumanization and humiliating acts that were forced upon a certain group of people. Why do you think dehumanization was a method used on the Jews and different groups of people in history?
I think that it was a way to like bring the Jews down, and like turn them into something not human, so it was easier and more justifiable to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's something that's not human, then it would be easier for them to be like, oh, we killed them because of this.
Yeah.
I agree with her, with Katie. I agree with Katie, but I also think it was partially because the Germans thought so badly already of the Jews that it was kind of just like second nature to them almost. They were like, this is what you are. Like, they didn't even think of them as humans to begin with.
Yeah.
So they wanted the Jews to think of themselves so poorly, just because they thought of them so poorly.
Yeah. I think it was a way to like assert their like power and also like show how much hatred they had for the Jews, because if you think about it, the German officers were taught to hate Jews and like other people in the concentration camps. So I think dehumanization was a method used so that the Jews and other people in the camps could know how much like hatred and anger the officers had towards them.
Yeah. I also think it's partially to do with the fact that they don't want the Jews to fight back or escape, and to dehumanize them, which would mean like to have them lose hope of ever escaping, and like everything they try to do to like fight back or anything will just get them killed, so that they won't try to escape and they won't try to fight back at all.
Yeah, and like there was such a build up to the Holocaust, because like the war had been going on a few years before that started, and then the build up to the war had also taken so long. So I feel like a lot of the Nazi soldiers in the camps had grown up in like Hitler Youth and had grown up with all of this Nazi propaganda, and it was just what they knew. It was just what they were taught and what they thought was right. Like they thought what they were doing was helping their country and helping bring the final solution and bring it to the Aryan race. So just what they thought was right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Not that it's like justifying what they did at all.
Yeah. Recap, my guest and I talked about our takeaways, thoughts, and opinions of the book. If you enjoy reading memoirs or want to learn more about the Holocaust, I would recommend this book to you. Okay. Any final thoughts on the book?
I don't think so.
Okay. Today we talked about the book Night by Ellizer Wiesel and his accounts during the Holocaust. We also discussed our thoughts on the book. Stay tuned for the next and final episode where new guests will appear. Okay. Bye!
Bye!